190 years in prison. That is the punishment that a Dallas jury says this doctor, and the former doctor now obviously, deserves for his actions around patients and colleagues. As Andrea Lucia reports tonight, it was the maximum sentence possible for crimes all caught on camera right here and played at trial.
4 former patients of the Baylor Scott and White Surgicare Center in North Dallas shared stories of going in for routine surgery and waking up to a nightmare of complications. Prosecutors say they all received IV bags Ortiz had poisoned in an apparent attempt to make other doctors look bad and himself better by comparison. "I felt I was going to die," said one patient. "I lost my independence, my dignity," expressed another. The father of an 18-year-old patient remembered for hours on end being told, "We don't know if he's going to make it." It's this image of an emotionless Ortiz watching as a poisoned patient in distress is wheeled out, he said haunts his sleepless nights. Dr. Melanie Kaspar, a fellow anesthesiologist whose heart stopped after she used an IV bag on herself. Ortiz wasn't charged in Kaspar's death, but the judge acknowledged in court he was responsible for it and that it would be considered in his sentencing. The judge here handed down the maximum punishment, 190 years in prison. Ortiz's actions, he found, were tantamount to attempted murder. It's all Kaspar said he hoped to hear, and all he needed to finally be able to move forward after the loss of his wife.
I'll probably never spend another 2 or 3 minutes thinking about this individual the rest of my life. Today marks the end of a beautiful part of my life, and tomorrow I'll step in a different direction. So, you know, it's a bright sunny day. Let's get it started.
In Dallas, Andrea Lucia, CBS News.
We don't look at doctors as being criminals. Most of the time, they can do no wrong, and because of that, we tend to not really scrutinize them, and we don't really question them. If they tell us that they need to do something, most of the time people will go with it and say, well, she's the doctor, she knows best. And we don't take the time to educate ourselves or do our own research into things because the doctor said so. The doctor says this because we rely on their years of studying, their years of training. We rely on that. You know, we know doctors have to go to school for 100 years in order to become a doctor. We know that, you know, they have to study and it's rigorous and, you know, all of these things that they have to go through. And so we tend to trust their word. And another thing that really adds to that is you look at television. You look at how there are so many shows about hospitals and doctors and nurses and all of these things that they tend to go through and, you know, in their daily lives and at work. And we look at them and they are on television and they're saving people and they're, you know, jumping into action and finding solutions and they're helping people and they're saving the day. And so we carry that perception with us in real life. We tend to always think in somewhere in the back of our mind, you know, hospitals equal good. Doctors equal good people. Nurses equals good people. And that helps solidify that perception to where we just let them do anything most of the time. If there's a procedure that we don't know or understand, or if there's some drug that we don't know or understand, we ask them their opinion, they give it to us, and we go with that. Even if we go get a second opinion, we go with that. Because a lot of times what they'll do is sometimes they'll, throw so much jargon at you and you don't know what any of this stuff is. But you just say, well, hey, you know best. Because it would be too much work for you to do your own research. And rather than spend that time, that extra time that would be beneficial to you to do, you just go with whatever the doctor says. And that's that. So doctors really get a pass. So if it's something that they do, now if it's like an assault of some sort, I mean, where they're fighting someone, or if they take advantage of a patient sexually, those things are frowned upon. They'll face serious charges, and they'll just take them out. But in other cases, or there's a recent case where sometimes there are punishments for doctors for harms that they cause. But this one is malicious in nature. Okay, it's not for research, but it does kind of speak to how people are shocked that someone of his stature, who's in that box of being supposed to be a good, caring person because of their profession, and how that perception is ruined because of a malicious act. Now, this doctor took IV bags and he injected those bags with some type of deadly drugs. I don't know exactly what drugs he put in there, but it was something that was not supposed to be in those bags. And he injected these bags, and there were several people who experienced some serious complications due to that in the hospitals where these bags were used. One of his colleagues, a doctor, died from using one of those IV bags at home. Now, according to the news report, what he did this because he was facing disciplinary actions for some sort of malpractice that occurred because of him. And he wanted the hospital and other doctors to look bad. And this was all caught on camera, him injecting these bags. Okay. And most recently, I think it was maybe last week sometime, he was sentenced to 190 years in prison because of that. So this is a prime example of people using their power and using those perceptions to get away, or to try to get away with committing crimes like this. Now, had this not been caught on camera, I don't think it would have gone this way. It would have been much harder to prove who did it, where it came from. Not to say that they wouldn't have solved it, but it's less likely that they would have had they not gotten that caught on camera. Had they not caught that on camera. So it's important that we remember cases like this and apply this same type of pressure when it comes to secret experiments. Because something like this, number one, a fellow doctor lost their life, right? And the reason it was done, no one benefited from this. Okay? No one benefited from the harm that he caused. Now, let's take this same situation And let's say this was done for research purposes, right? Let's say it had not been caught on camera. And let's say he was doing it to see the effects of some new type of IV bag, just to see, what would happen. Would he have experienced the same punishment? Would he have experienced the same punishment? If other hospitals or, the company that makes the IV bags or some other organization or government agency would benefit from the results of his experiment, if he was taking the information, documenting it, taking that data, putting it all together, coming up with some sort of new advancement, would he have received the same sentence? Would he have received the same punishment? Even if people were harmed, even if people would have died, if there had been money in that, I can almost guarantee you he would not have experienced the same punishment. This wouldn't have made the news. That video would have been suppressed or lost if it would have even gone to court. Regardless of if another doctor died or a patient died or, someone was seriously harmed, I do not believe that this would have had the same effect.